Hey there, Jim Earl. I bet my town is smaller than your town.
I don't know, Bobby Joe. I don't think so.
Hey, no, my town is so small, the welcome sign and the thanks for visiting sign are on the same post.
Oh, yeah? Well, my town is so small, we only have one yellow page, and it's just a Post-it note with everybody's name and number on it.
Oh, yeah, my town is so small, the high school reunion is just called Friday night at the diner.
Oh, yeah? Well, my town is so small, the barber, mechanic, and the funeral director are all the same guy, and he still remembers what you wanted for Christmas when you were 6. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Rural Pastors Talk, a podcast highlighting the advancement of Christ's kingdom in rural places, just like the town you live in. The rural church is not the baby pool we splash around in before moving on to bigger opportunities. It is not the place we're confined until we can take off those training wheels, and it is not God's penalty box as a punishment for breaking the rules. No, Jesus died for his people, and as long as Christ's people live in rural places, a vibrant, healthy, multiplying presence of his church will be there too. Well, hello, my name is Josh MacClaren. I am a rural pastor, and I'm here with two very dear friends.
Hey, guys, my name is Joe Wagner. I also am a rural pastor.
My name's Eric Grant, and I am also a rural pastor.
Look at that. They're like the three amigos. Oh,
Bam.
Something I just wanted to share as well.
Sure.
Like when we make those country redneck voices, it's not because we're making fun of country people.
Nope.
It's because we love them and we are them.
Love them. We just don't
Amen.
have the accents. Hey, on this episode of Rural Pastors Talk, we're going to talk about churches in church planning in tiny towns and why churches in tiny towns matter and why, if you are looking to plant, you should plant a church in a tiny town. A book recommendation we think will really make your frown upside down, and a quote from Steven Whitmer to make your get here out in the boonies.
All right, so let's get started off with a question. And right now, we are getting close to the end of winter.
Dude,
As
it's in the
recording of
50s
this-
today.
It is in the 50s, and it's still, what is it, January or February? I don't even know.
It's February.
It's February. All right, question. How much snow have you ever shoveled at one time? How long, how much, how long of a driveway? Hit me with it, Josh.
Well, the longest driveway I've probably ever shoveled was my childhood driveway. And
Just
it
a
wasn't
couple
that
years
long.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, nice. The baby face. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long, man. So it was maybe 25 yards. Maybe.
25
Like,
yards.
that is not
You
that-
and a shovel.
Yeah.
Shovel this out, boy.
Yeah, and honestly, I was a pretty lazy kid, so my dad probably plowed it or something.
All right. Okay, Eric, for you, what's the most you've ever shoveled before
I
in
see
your
where
life?
you're going with this.
Nice.
Yes.
I asked this question for you, brother.
Yeah, people don't know. I have like a quarter-mile driveway.
And it is
I think it
steep.
snowed probably, 2 feet a couple weeks ago?
Uh-huh. It was a light snow, though, fluffy.
Yeah, real light. Yeah, after 1,000 shovels, I managed to get down to the bottom. So, yeah.
And so it was all just you and a shovel.
For the most part, then this kindly old gentleman showed up with a Dodge Ram and a nice snowplow and got the last maybe quarter of it. But, yeah.
But other than that, it was all you. All right, my driveway is not quite as long as Eric's driveway, but it was a good 100-yarder. And I did it one time in 2 feet of snow when it was not so fluffy, and I ended up at the chiropractor.
How was your back?
First time I'd ever been to
Oh,
the
yeah?
chiropractor.
Wow.
Yeah. The old sciatica was going off. All right, so you guys know that you hear a different voice in here. We've already introduced him as Eric.
And he wins the reward of shoveling the most.
The most, he gets the trophy.
Yep.
And this is his very first podcast he's ever been on, podcast rookie.
Oh, yeah.
Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself and what are you doing right now? The two big things that are going on in your life. Share.
I'm about to have my second child any minute now.
Your wife is.
Yes, not me.
Yeah, one
I'll
flesh.
I'll
It's
be
fine.
there to catch. So, important job. Yeah, the other thing, I just planted a church with a fellow brother of mine back in October in the smallest town probably in the United States. So,
You are the inspiration for this podcast episode because we're talking about planting churches in tiny towns or just churches in tiny towns altogether. This is what I would like you to do if you're out there listening. I want you to email us If you think that if you are in a church in a town tinier than Eric's town, let us know. Name of your church, who you are, and how many people are in your town. Do the same for us, Eric. Name of your church, name of the town, and how many people live there.
I pastor Trinity Church. It's in Antrim, Pennsylvania. You probably will not find it on a map. There in our church, we have about 30 people attending every week. In our town, there's probably 200 housing units, and half of them are hunting cabins.
I was just going to ask you, do you think that there's more permanent residences or more hunting cabins?
More hunting cabins.
There's more hunting cabins there. What else is there in the town? You don't have to share the name of it, although it's a great place that we like to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's there's a bar across the street, and that's the only other establishment in town.
And man, they have the best wings.
Yeah, the wings are great.
Cheesesteaks are great.
Cheesesteaks are great, and it's a great place to go over and have meetings and lunches and take people to places there.
Yep.
But what do you think? And Josh, I'm going to ask you this too, because you're not planning in a big town. How many people are in your town?
3,000 in the borough. So bigger, much bigger than Antrim. But
You're 3,000 in the borough. So 3,000 there, 200 for you, and Wellsboro is what, 2,600 in the borough?
32 in the borough. But the zip code in Wellsboro jumps to 10,000. Ours is 6,200. So.
We're still not talking huge numbers at all. And compared to some of our brothers who we know very well, our towns, all of them are tiny. One of the things I would say about your town, Eric, not only is it a tiny town, but it is like on the frontier of wilderness. It's
and it
a
didn't
pioneer.
used to be that way.
No.
Yeah, maybe a little bit about the history.
Yeah, at one point in time, it was a major coal mining town, and I believe there was close to 4,000 people that lived there. There were 5 churches, a school.
Wow.
The railroad came right through there. All of that is gone. We were the last church building standing, and it closed down in 2002, 7, somewhere in there. It's been over 20 years since a congregation has worshiped the Lord there, so Brainerd was able to buy it back, and we planted it.
You planted there. That is fantastic. Just so that Brainerd's not planting.
No. Yes.
But we were able to help fund that church building. So thank you very much to Brainerd and all the people who had given to that. One real quick interesting thing about the church building itself.
It's made out of stone, which is awesome. The stained glass is just absolutely beautiful.
It's an old Episcopal church, right?
Yes, and there's no like natural gas or anything, so we heat with propane, and sometimes that runs out.
Yeah. To get from the upstairs to the downstairs, you either have to go outside or jump down through the trap door.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're thinking about putting a fireman pole. So you
Have
just
the
slide
kids
down.
slide down.
Send the kids down to the kids' ministry on the sliding bowl. All right, so let's talk this through. Because I know that there are brothers out there and there are people out there who are in churches in towns that are just this small. What is one of the great benefits of pastoring in a small town?
I think the best benefit so far has been able to meet everybody, and everybody knows each other's names, and you can get involved in people's lives. Like, there's not a lot of hiding you can do when your neighbors all can see you and know where you go and where you work, and it's just very intimate there. So.
Now, we don't necessarily need to talk it all the way through, but one of the limitations that you have right now at your present church is parking. But does that necessarily matter right now for where you're at?
Right now, no, because a lot of people walk there.
They just walk from home
Yes.
to church. It's glorious. It is super cool. Josh,
Yo.
one of the best things that you can think of for planting, you did plant
Yep.
a couple years ago.
Indeed.
But you are pastoring in a small town. Mm-hmm. So, best thing.
The best thing about pastoring
best
in town?
thing about it.
You put me on the spot, Joe. Killing me. I do think small town, I so appreciate the ability to know meaningfully the people who are there, to be able to go into any establishment and recognize someone. Obviously, that comes with its drawbacks, but with the lack of affluency, it allows you to just build really deep relationships that can last, as well as, Sorry,
You're
Catherine.
doing good, man. Keep going.
Well, part of me wants to even scale back, like, this is like 5 minutes ago, which is a bummer. Eric had mentioned the size of the town, and then it would have been a really easy transition to say, why did you plant there then? Like, if this town was once in its heyday, what would be the purpose of you planting now? Why is that helpful? Why is that beneficial?
Eric, do you want to answer that question?
Absolutely, because they need the gospel just as much as everybody else. And it's a place that's often overlooked, especially by bigger organizations. It doesn't really seem that beneficial, but going there and hearing the stories and hearing people, we haven't had any conversions yet, but people saying, we're so glad that there's life in this town again, and we're so glad there's a church, and the church is being used as a church.
What would you say to somebody who would say to you, would challenge you and push back a little bit there? And they'd say, yeah, okay, I get it. I understand. But did you do any research? I mean, did you try to figure out how many people live there and whether it would actually support a pastor in a church in that town? What about the demographics? What's your 10-year plan? Did you do any of that sort of research at all? And especially if that research said this is not a good place to plant, what would be your pushback to that?
I would say, well, God says go out to the ends of the earth and disciple his people. So why am I overlooking an area like that?
Yeah, God's glory is going to cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. And if we just wait for the cherry-picked places where we can go and plant churches instead of tackling these other little bitty tiny towns or other areas where the demographics or the research says don't go there, well, then we're going to leave that spot blank and empty.
So, Eric, what's been some encouragements for you planting in Antrim? What have you enjoyed about it? Maybe even some advantages of planting in a tiny town? What do you think?
I'm seeing a lot of good come out of it. So I'm seeing the people who came with us to the church are really just coming in their own. So their spiritual gifts are really coming to the surface, and they're being invested in, and they're investing in the church so well. The other thing, the people that have been coming and attending from the town, we're seeing some cool stories. One guy broke down in front of our church when we were having a tree lighting ceremony, and one of our congregants went out and fixed his car for him. He was out there in the freezing cold for like 30 minutes working on his car. They get it up and coming. They decide, well, they were so nice to us, we're coming to that church, and they've been coming pretty faithfully ever since.
Really?
So,
That is
Lord,
amazing
That's
story.
great.
there's been a few stories like that. That just really warms my heart.
Yeah, you were able to have a pretty meaningful phone call and meeting with someone who was in a place of kind of distress even, and
Yeah.
give them the hope of the gospel.
Yeah, there was another a gentleman that was dealing with the death of his daughter over a year ago, and just reached out to us, and he lived right down the street, and he's like, I know I need a church. I know you need to hear the gospel. Would you mind meeting with us? So
It's awesome.
yeah, and then there's a couple other families that are a little more on the poverty end of things, and they just come just because it's a warm place, and they're hearing the gospel, and it's great, and they're starting to really start to understand it. So.
Amazing. Praise God.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
the Lord
awesome.
Jesus said, when you do it to the least of one of these, like you've done it to me, right?
Yeah.
If you've given them something to eat or been able to serve their needs, that's great.
You know, I want to go a little bit different direction here in a second, but as I was sitting here thinking about it, I'm still at the church that sent you to Mansfield.
Yeesh.
You know, finish this story for me. So we sent our best.
Oh,
You're not going to
well.
hear me say this very often, Josh, but
That's
you
fine.
are our best,
No, I'm not.
right? To go and plant in another tiny town, and then what's
Sounds
the
like
next
there's a
leg of it?
pattern in Acts we could copy, Jim.
I would think so. Tell us about that. maybe.
Yeah. In after Stephen's martyrdom in the book of Acts, I think it's maybe chapter 9 or 10. In 11, Barnabas hears of it's Stephen's martyrdom. If I said Barnabas, sorry. Barnabas hears of the need. Jerusalem hears of the need, so they send Barnabas to Antioch, which is this place that disciples are being made. Barnabas recognizes he needs help, so he sends for the Apostle Paul from his hometown, and then they meet and they serve for a year. And then after about a year, give or take, the Holy Spirit sets both Paul and Barnabas apart in Antioch to then send them out and planting. And we've had that experience with Eric. Eric and Nate, the brother who went with them, were being raised up as elders in Mansfield, having been sent from Wellsboro over.
So here's the progression
Yep.
from the tiny town of Wellsboro
Yep.
We planted a church in the tiny town of Mansfield, and that church in the tiny town of Mansfield then was instrumental in sending out the pastors for
Antrim.
Antrim. Yeah. So you've been along for the ride. You were started at Wellsboro, helped plant in Mansfield, and now you're planting in Antrim.
Yes, was it 3 years ago?
Yeah, man. I mean, the work was 4 years ago, but officially, 2.5 years ago, October.
It's
of
about
23.
3 years ago. Josh has said, "I'm heading over to Mansfield." I said, "I'll give you 3 months," and then I stayed over there.
Awkward.
And next thing I know, I'm heading to Antrim. So.
Yeah.
You're heading to Antrim.
Eric is a graduate of the Brainerd residency as well. And we knew that, he had been gifted pastorally. It's just a matter of where would that happen and how would that happen and when would it happen. And it's been pretty amazing to see the ride so far. So,
all right. So we have established your bona fides, both of you, that you had planted a church in a small town. I also had planted a church in a small town before I had come over to Christ Church. So all three of us have planted a church in a small town. All right. Bona fides established. Now, what then could we share with others of how that we would pastor in a small town? Right? Here's the encouragement. Brothers out there in a small town, here's our encouragement to you. How we would pastor in a small town. What changes? Does anything change? Does it have to change? Are we being pragmatic or practical or real? How long do you preach for, Eric?
We aim for 20 minutes.
20 minutes. How long would you prefer to preach for, Eric?
Like 3 hours. But, yeah.
all right, Paul.
No, I try to keep it around.
You
40
keep the windows
minutes,
closed and you're on the first floor.
Fall out, yeah.
All right, so you would prefer to preach for 3 hours. In realistic time, you probably would really prefer to preach for 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
But why do you only preach for 20 minutes?
Just coming from unchurched people, they just don't have the attention span build up.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that country people are dumb?
No, not at all. Not at all. I just think they're not used to long sermons. And people can, especially with me, hear my voice, I could dull some people to sleep. So.
How about you, Josh?
Yes, well, being discipled under the Christ Church peeps, we stick to 35-ish.
You're at 35-ish?
Our people were not, the majority of our people had come from Wellsboro. Now, by God's grace, we've seen some families from the community. That's, the whole reason we were there. We have some transplants who've moved in that are now attending. So our demographics were just a little different with the people we were bringing. Right. And so we had the capacity to have a little longer sermons.
What would you say to a young pastor who loves the Lord, loves the Word, and loves to preach and knows the importance of preaching, of which we really foundationally hold as something of utmost importance, the importance of preaching. Yes, it's one of our pillars. But what would you say to him if he preached regularly for 40 to 50 minutes, and then he comes to you and he says, I don't know what to do. The people keep telling me that they want me to preach shorter and more simple. What would you say to him?
Well, I'm new to this game myself. I've only been a regular preaching pastor for 2.5 years. And I have a lot to learn. And I think the more is not always better when it comes to preaching, especially if you're new to it.
Does preaching for 20 minutes mean that you're going to, preaching for 20 minutes instead of 40 minutes, does that mean you're going to teach less important stuff?
No, I don't think it compromises your argument in any way, as long as your argument, you understand, what the text is saying, and you're articulating it in such a way that you're seeking to be persuasive to your people. If your argument's tight, you can do that in 20 minutes. That was, I think I preached for 22 minutes in Antrim last Sunday.
It was 2 nights ago. We were all sitting in the church and you were preaching 22 minutes.
And that morning I preached for 33 in Mansfield. But
same sermon?
My audience was different. Nope, different text. Yeah, Matthew 25 in the morning and Mark chapter 2 in the evening. Mm-hmm. So,
Eric, you were nodding your head along. What are your thoughts on that? If you were going to, your admonition, your exhortation and encouragement to that pastor who wants to preach for 45 or 50, but really the folks in his congregation, they're more like a 20 or 25 minute.
I think I have to tell myself off and get to the point, dummy. So we would all agree that every passage has a message, a specific message for the people that are sitting in front of you. So you don't have to bore them with too many rabbit holes and different stuff. Now, each congregation, different context. My congregation now is really evangelistic efforts. So we try to aim for that a little more than.
Okay, let's pour into that a little bit. You're in a situation where it's more evangelistic, right?
Yes.
Rather than what?
Well, I mean, we had planted again with 80 people who are coming from a church background. They were healthy church members.
This
with
is
their
in your
children
situation.
coming. Yeah, in Mansfield.
80 people came from Wellsboro and
Yeah.
went to Mansfield with
Yeah.
you. How many people went from Mansfield, went from a church situation to an unchurched situation with you?
I think we have 5 families, so roughly around a little less than 15 people, right around that.
So it's like half the church.
Yeah.
Is not regularly involved in the life of a church. So they're, like you said, unchurched.
And just to pull back the curtain a little bit, the church that you're pastoring at is the only church in the entire township.
Yeah.
It's not just that little bitty tiny town. It's the entire township. And the folks there that are coming to Antrim, I talked with quite a few of them a couple nights ago, hadn't been going to any church at all.
Yeah. They don't leave the town, so.
They don't leave the town.
Yeah, they go get the groceries. That's the only time they travel outside the town. So.
Yeah, there's a reason people live there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. All right. Any other advice that you would want to give to a pastor in a tiny town? Somebody's got to say something smart. How about leadership? How about leading your congregation, leading your members in a small town when rather than dealing with a membership of 200, 100, or 60, you've got a core team of like you said, maybe a dozen or 15, not very many.
Yeah, so here's a tricky part. As we all came from a bigger church setting, we're used to all the things a bigger church can give you. And that's not the same context we find ourselves in now. Right. So although we want to do 100 different ministry things, we really can't. So we need to just take our energy and put it into the means of grace, preaching the word, the ordinances, and just really concentrate and letting God work and building his church. And
yeah. I had a pastor recently share with us. I took our residents to a partner church of ours, and he said the what and the why doesn't change, but the how changes based off of your context. I've even found that in Mansfield. We have a smaller congregation, and that means we have less men. And so we have the ability to gather our men a little more regularly in a little more concerted, or not concerted, but yeah, a little more regularly than Wellsboro is based off of just the sheer amount of men, right, that you have. So the what and the why are the same. We're making disciples who represent Christ. We exist to glorify God, and we're going to do that through, the word preached, the word celebrated through the ordinances, but how those things are done, right, can look different, whether it's mission groups or whether it's a Sunday evening Bible study, So we're able to be flexible based off of our context.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, too, is if you're pastoring a small congregation, prepare to do things you didn't want to do or you didn't expect to do. So 2 weeks ago, I was out with a couple plumbers in the freezing cold trying to unfreeze our pipes.
So why in the world would somebody want to go and be a pastor in a tiny town? And I'm not talking about gospel theological sorts of reasons. We've already covered that. Why would somebody want to go and pastor in Antrim or in Mansfield?
Just seeing the life changes it brings in people is well worth it to me. And getting to know people on that kind of level, it's just been great and so rewarding to me.
I think I've heard TJ say that Eric is ready to live and die in Antrim. Did you actually say that?
I may have said that. I thought I only said that to my wife, but
we've got the whole place bugged. It sounds like trouble to me. What do I hear? That's our SOS, Josh Alino.
We need one. Yes. You good?
This is what you always do this part.
Well, the SOS guys. We would love the reach of Rural Pastors Talk to go beyond just the three of us, and we need your help to do that. So this is our SOS. First and foremost, we would ask for you to subscribe if you haven't. That way you can stay up to date with new content as we release it. Offer a review, a 5-star review in particular, if you would be so kind. That would aid the algorithm. And if you give us a bad review, instead of just giving us a bad review, just email us, realpastorstalk@gmail.com, and let's talk about it before we get that nasty little 1-star review. And then finally, share. If this has been helpful to you, if you're encouraged by it, or you'd like someone else to consider what it could look like to plant in a tiny town, and you've been looking for some resources to help them with that, perhaps this will be that. So just share it. So subscribe, offer a review, and share.
Wonderful. Now it's time for Stuff
Rural
Pastors
Can Use
Reviews. Eric, tell us about an amazing book that you love.
All right, one of my top 5 books is Preaching and Preachers by the great Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones. This is a book that he actually gave a few talks to college students who were thinking about going into the ministry or had already accepted a call there. And really, it's great. He talks about expository preaching, what it is, what it's not. But the biggest thing that helped me in my walk was when he talks about the call to ministry and the 5 things you need to be looking out for. And when I was trying to discern what call I had, whether that was preaching or being a pastor, that was really helpful to me. So I'd recommend it to anybody who's young and considering ministry, but also I think it's great help to anybody that may be doing this for a few years.
That is Preaching and Preachers by the great Martin Lloyd-Jones. And now a quote to turn your frown upside down by one of the friends of the podcast, Steven Whitmer. Past guest. Yeah. From his book, A Big Gospel in Small Places, Why Ministry in Forgotten Communities Matters, he says, it can be difficult to go to such humble places like small rural communities, and it can be difficult to stay there. But if these billions of souls are to be reached with the gospel, we must go.
Amen. Thank you guys for joining us. Lord willing, we'll see you next time. Until then, Godspeed and
raise your Ebenezer.